I'm gonna turn it over to Marcy Burchfield, who's with the Toronto Region Board of Trade, who's been working on, I guess, a number of other other aspects of a relationship with Transport Canada. She's going to talk about economic zone plans. Marcy, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're clear.
Okay, great. And I'll start to share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes, I got it.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for inviting me to participate in this forum. And yes, we are another data sharing partnership that Transport Canada has invited us to participate in. So just a little bit about the Board of Trade and specifically about the unit that I head up. So as you know, the Board of Trade, we're a 175-year-old membership organization, business association, and really more recently, I think that the board put region in its name, and this was really in 2014. And there was some, I think, issue originally thinking that the Board of Trade is trying to sort of engulf membership from others, and really other chambers of commerce, but really what it was meant to do was to really emphasize that we are kind of one economic zone and one integrated economic zone. You know, our labor force moves across municipal boundaries, our goods move across municipal boundaries, but really there's no entity that's planning as one economic zone in the region. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And then, so really the Economic Blueprint Institute was headed up to really action out and collect more information to make the case for one economic zone. So prior to COVID hitting, my unit was putting together an information base to look at industry dynamics, talent dynamics, the innovation ecosystem that supports, you know, our economy across the region, which includes McMaster University as one of our, you know, non-firm innovation ecosystem actors. But also, you know, what are the challenges of the region as it relates to being a competitive city region? And, you know, one cannot look at challenges without looking at transportation challenges and particularly movement of goods challenges. So my team was headed up to produce this economic blueprint in May. And then with COVID hitting, we really had to reframe kind of what we were looking at, because it was all framed around growth. And as you all know, we are in an economic recovery mode. So just a little bit about what I represent at the Board of Trade and what it's meant to do in terms of its function and how it leads into the board's policy advocacy work, as well as business planning. So the board has, I'm just trying to advance my slide. The board has worked on the movement of goods issue for quite some time. In 2016, it really became an active policy issue for the board, and it was a number of reports were commissioned by the board under the leadership of Natasha Polanova, who has since moved on. But we engaged CPCA in a series of 6 reports, and a 7th one is actually being revisited now and on the growth of e-commerce. But these reports, I'll talk a little bit about the major findings, but they also led, importantly, to this Movement of Goods Council, which many of you are part of, including the Port of Hamilton and Transport Canada. And this is really meant to be, you know, a roundtable for folks to talk about the issues of goods movement and challenges, and focusing on solutions to the problem. So some of the big points that came out of it, you know, that we all know that the movement of goods is critical to our local economy, our regional economy. Part of what the reports have said is the need for better data to understand and remove the barriers to freight efficiency, and you know, reliable transportation is really, you know, the challenges in our transportation really increases the cost of doing business, which, you know, perhaps maybe some of it is reflected in some of the charts that David showed. We have a really well-connected region, both by air, by rail, by water, and by road. But one would suggest that it's not that there is a lack of coordination on logistics management amongst those kind of multi-modes. And I also want to recognize that Ministry of Transportation is really looking at a multimodal long-term plan, which I think is really ripe and necessary, but it's still underway. It could, the biggest pain point is the congestion costs a lot in our region. $125 per household in increased costs is some of the calculations that CPCA has made. And really, we don't know the cost of lost opportunities as it relates to business being more effective and efficient with in the absence of a regional logistics plan. Again, some of the issues that around the challenges for movement of goods on the last mile connection is one, and one certainly that is we're actively pursuing through the Movements of Good Council with other partners such as Pembina Institute, looking at what are some novel and innovative solutions to that last mile connectivity in the supply chain. And maybe I'll just move to, one of the bigger issues, I think, in particular, when it comes to logistics hubs and the expansion of logistics hubs, is this real conflict in land uses between growth, residential growth and expansion of our logistics hubs and centers. And the conflict that trucks and passengers have on our roads. And so again, a multimodal approach to both the movement of goods and the movement of people, we really need to that is paramount to the competitiveness of our region. And on the right, you just see a few of the major infrastructure options that one of the last reports that CPCA did for us that sort of highlighted as real needs in the region. So when I talk about one economic integrated economic zone, our blueprint work and much of the work as it relates to the region is really related to this geography as outlined in orange, which stretches from Waterloo region through to Guelph and includes the GTA and Hamilton. And the reason for that is that we are part of this Canada's Innovation Corridor Business Council. And that business council is made up of the 11 largest chambers of commerce in that geography. And they really advocate together to address pain points in the region and issues of competitiveness. And that's really why we focus on that geography in the orange. But as we look at different issues in the region, that regional boundary and the issue under study needs to be looked at, and include, sort of porous boundaries, because obviously Niagara is a very important part of the movement of goods, as is, the Southern Ontario border near Detroit as well. And so as we look at the plan for this economic zone, we're really collecting information that's beyond this geography of the innovation corridor, so that we can better inform the planning of the economic zone itself. One of the things that would have come out in May with the economic blueprint is this economic structure piece that we have been looking at. And so what you'll see on the next slide is a map that really indicates where the bulk of the employment lands are in our region. And really what we start to do is we use jobs as a proxy to understand, the differences between these employment centers and label them and categorize them according to the economic activities that are happening in there. So obviously the metropolitan center of downtown Toronto is a very important part of our zone and contains a lot of jobs and access point, and is a central access point for labor market movement and destination in the region. But what you see in the blue, in the light blue, are all the the employment areas that are specifically related to goods production and goods distribution. So obviously logistics as well. And you can see that they're scattered all across the region, and just understanding, where these are in the region and how they relate to each other, and how they relate to to where the final destination of some of these products are going is really important. So this is sort of a first step to really understanding and planning, that our economic zone as it relates to logistics. Again, zooming out a little bit, we can connect this to the broader region in the Greater Golden Horseshoe, which is what the MTO plan is really oriented to, but also outside of the boundaries of the Greater Golden Horseshoe as well. This just gives you some sense of how the distribution of jobs. And again, this is sort of one indicator of economic activity, the distribution of jobs in the region as it relates to logistics, warehousing, and transportation jobs, and where they are in the region. And obviously, the Pearson Airport Hub is a major employer of logistics employment in the region. And the color gradation is really the concentration of jobs that are also part of understanding, how to plan for logistics in the region. We got really great, as many of you know, really great information about in our Transportation Tomorrow survey that happens, every 5 years, as to how commuters are flowing across the region. And, many of the major trips, especially work trips to the airport, to the Pearson Airport hub, are a great generator of congestion in our region. But what we're really lacking is more relevant, granular, and sector-specific information for movement of goods. And that's really where our partnership with Transport Canada comes into play. So in 2019, Transport Canada and the Toronto Region Board of Trade really started developing this data partnership. And what we want to do is analyze and map goods imported into Southern Ontario from abroad, by air, by road, by rail, and by sea, ultimately speaking. And this analysis will really be able to understand the journey of goods through the region, and, and the time that it takes, and really be able to, once we understand the historical patterns, we can really be able to model and anticipate and better plan for some of the movement of goods. Really the goals of this partnership, we started talking in 2019, and as the next slide will show, will give you a bit of a sense of the trajectory of the project. But really is, again, we really want to understand the historical supply chain in order to improve the predictability of supply chains, really, and to ultimately improve the competitiveness of the innovation corridor and reduce some of the congestion that is in our region. We want to be able to ultimately release this information, an aggregate version of the information, through a dashboard, to be able to share it with our members who are in this in this sector, and who to better plan for what they're doing, and really to identify factors such as time to market, and to really aid the supply chain planning. So, we started this discussion in 2019. One of the first things that we did was, as part of a new unit at the board, a new data-driven unit at the Board of Trade, we needed to get our own house in order in terms of how to receive some of this very complicated, very large data sets to be able to work on this project. And so we started out in early spring and early summer with this governance project to really showcase to Transport Canada that we do have security protocols in place, and to test some of those things out. Throughout the summer, we're going to be negotiating a data sharing partner, or a multi-year data sharing partner. And in the fall and the winter, really hoping to be able to integrate some of the information that we have currently with some of the air and marine data that Transport Canada provides. And then in the spring that should be 2021, I'm sorry about that, report to Transport Canada and really publicly release some of this information and this mapping. So I want to give a big shout out to both Justin and Louis Paul who are on the line, to thank them again for approaching the Board of Trade of this. I think that, you know, combining this information with the information that the Economic Blueprint Institute is collecting to really understand and plan for, you know, this one economic zone and advocate for a more regional approach to our economic development, I think will go far in making this a much more competitive region. So thank you.
Thanks, Marcy. It was a great presentation. It had me curious. There's been a lot of things in the last couple of years, even kind of, well, especially kind of since post-COVID, that we've kind of discovered that we can work from home, and so there's a lot of stuff, I guess, has happened in the last little while where the kind of volume of goods is kind of coming and going, or kind of number of trucks and cars have taken a lot of the pressure off, at least for the time being. I was wondering if you're seeing any trends yourself in kind of the movement of goods as a result of kind of recent trends, or if the data can even show that at this point.
So, so there's a couple of things there. I mean, the whole conflict between the movement of goods and the movement of people and congestion in our region, you know, no one's feeling it at this time, at least not until you go out on sort of the weekend. People going to their cottages, I think the most of people experience and congestion these days. But I certainly think that, you know, some of the work that we're doing currently to do that pivot, you know, post-COVID, is looking at, you know, where is the capacity for remote work, you know, from the perspective of the occupations that can work remotely and where those people generally live. And so to even, you know, even I was talking to colleagues that even if there's sort of a 5% uptake or 10% uptake of remote work on a regular basis, that does make a dent in our congestion, and it, you know, understanding where that potential may be is, I think, it would be is useful. And then again, as you know, remote work has accelerated, so too has e-commerce, and that's something that, you know, the board is looking at with transport or with Canada Post. We're hoping to understand, you know, what is exactly that uptake. And, you know, it's very likely that, you know, people are not going to unlearn their habits of e-commerce, and that will continue to grow. So so that's a bit of a long-winded answer, but I think it's sort of two-pronged. It's, you know, congestion is related to the good movement of goods, but it's also related to the movement of people. And as we see one reducing, we see another increasing, and, you know, so what does that mean ultimately for purposes of congestion?
Okay, good. Well, thanks for that.